That's right. Thanks, Graham. You know what? COVID-19 is still progressing and continuing to make headlines all around the world. And there really is so much still for us to take note of, especially with the most latest stories emerging.
For sure. And we thought it might be interesting to get a doctor's input while giving a more detailed breakdown on some of those stories that caught our eye. Now, HIV and infectious diseases medical expert Dr. Emil Reid is with us this morning, and we can't wait to pick his brain on some of the headlines we have come across. So good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, guys.
Doctor, I'm quite fascinated with this one because, I mean, I love my animal, but even though I don't have a hamster, I need to just quickly see the first headline that caught our eye was one in Hong Kong, where about 2,000 small animals, including hamsters, chinchillas, and rabbits, will be culled while importation of such creatures have been suspended. And this is due to the escalation that came after dozens of hamsters that were imported from the Netherlands had tested positive for the Delta variant of COVID-19, and also the pet shop clerk had also contracted COVID at the time. So is there any medical science or any statistics that show there's been a transfer from humans giving animals COVID or animals giving humans COVID? What is the stance on that right now?
Well, that story is absolutely horrible. I mean, I love hamsters. and the fact of the matter is, one need to remember coronaviruses have been around for millions of years. And the important thing about coronaviruses is that it is an animal-based virus, so what we call in medicine a zoonosis. And usually what happens to zoonosis, there's transfer from viruses to humans. And the big thing, this virus have adapted in such a way that there is currently something happening called reverse zoonosis, meaning that people can transfer the infection to animals. And the big thing is, we don't know what the implication for the development of variants and those things, and particularly resistance, are. The one thing we do know that the previous variants, alpha, beta variants, those animals were inherently resistant to those variants, but somehow Delta actually was the first variant to cause reverse zoonosis. So the animals got reinfected. Up to now, we haven't seen an animal with Omicron. And I mean, there were cases in lions described in Pretoria, isolated, where people looking after the lions actually infected the lions.
They're also from Pretoria, so that's... No, I'm joking. So it's not actually as bizarre as it sounds. Let's look at the next headline. So Spain recently made the news while they're considering the following. Now, Spain is to move from treating COVID-19 as a pandemic to an endemic illness, with many European countries such as Denmark, Austria, and also the Netherlands, amongst many others, starting to drop many restrictions. Now, what does the move of treating an illness as endemic mean, and what would life potentially look like under these circumstances?
Wow, amazing question. The big thing, Denmark actually lifted all their restrictions yesterday.
Wow.
No mask wearing, no social distancing, no hand washing, nothing. And that is what it feels like living in an endemic sort of environment, meaning that life goes on as normal. And the most important thing in South Africa, in order to reach that, one need to be vaccinated, number one, and you actually need immunity. And if you look at Denmark, about 85% of their population have been fully vaccinated, with about 65% of people having received a third dose of the Pfizer vaccine as well. So as immunity within the population increases, and the diseases statistically decrease, the amount of people getting the infection and the people dying and getting hospitalized decrease, it means that we are going into an endemic phase. We're going to learn to live with this virus. And that is the main goal when it comes to SARS-CoV-2, COVID, not to eradicate the virus, but to live with the virus.
Sure.
At what point do you think we'll get there as South Africa? Do you think the end is near for us? Because it's starting to look like we're easing things, certain restrictions are dropping. Do you think we'll eventually get there?
I think that is the way we are heading. And I think currently the communication from government have been extremely poor, making people completely confused. You know, making statements, then retracting those statements. And I think communication from government and from the Command Council need to be more effective and should be better.
Okay. Well, Dr. Emile Reid is not going anywhere. We're going to continue with this conversation, all things COVID. So don't go anywhere. We're going to take a look at all of the headlines, and Dr. Emile Reid here is helping us to shed some insight into those.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Thank you, Graham. You know what? We are continuing this conversation because as COVID-19 continues to, make headlines all around the world, there are some really strange and interesting headlines coming out and some stories. And that's why we have asked Dr. Emile Reid to come and give us some insight. He is a HIV and infectious disease medical expert to really give us his opinion as we now turn our attention to our youth.
So another headline that made its way was Minister in the Presidency, Mondli Gungubele, announced Cabinet had decided that full-time learning in schools would resume for the first time in almost 2 years. Now, further stating primary, secondary and special schools will return to daily attendance. The regulatory provision for social distancing of 1 meter for learners in schools has also been removed. Now, Dr. Emile, but as a parent, there's obviously a lot of concerns with regards to this. Maybe put us at ease with regard to these implementations that will be taking place starting this Monday.
Well, the first thing I want to say is, yay! The kids can actually go back to school. And I think, as I said before, COVID-19 is a dynamic scientific field. And what we've learned over the last 2 years have been phenomenal. And the one thing we do know that despite South Africa having quite strict regulations and rules for testing and tracing people, it hasn't worked because the people that we could test and sample was about 10% of all cases.
Okay.
So the amount of deaths that we had in South Africa was probably way more than what they document, and also the amount of cases are probably way more. So we actually realized that all of those things that were put in place didn't work, didn't do anything. So despite mask wearing, despite sort of physical distancing, sanitization, Omicron just spread like a wildfire through South Africa and through the rest of the world. So it doesn't work. So why do something that doesn't work? So when it comes to our kids, we also learned that SARS-CoV-2 is actually airborne, and it's spread in an airborne manner and not via a droplet. So maintaining social distancing is not going to prevent you from contracting COVID-19. So the important thing for kids is to go back to school, everybody not on a rotational basis, open all the windows, make sure that the ventilation is amazing, and unfortunately for them to continue wearing their masks. So the penny eventually dropped.
Okay, you definitely put my mind at ease right now. Luke is going back there.
He's going back to school full time. Dr.
Exactly.
Emile Reid, there's another headline that comes from Japan, and this is because Japan approves the Pfizer shot for children aged 5 to 11. Now, even though this hasn't been approved yet in South Africa, how do they know that it is safe for them to do this on children? What are the steps involved, and when do you think that will happen for us as South Africans?
Okay. The important thing is it will happen and it needs to happen. But there's more important business, and that is the elderly people, people over the age of 50, and those with comorbidities. They need to be vaccinated first. And when it comes to our children, they will need to be vaccinated as well. I have teenagers in my household, and they're already vaccinated. We're talking about the little ones, 5 to 11, and even those younger than 5. Should we worry about giving them the vaccine? There's been a lot of reports in the past of children developing myocarditis, inflammation of their heart muscle, and all of those things. And the dosages was a big issue when it comes to kids between the age of 5 to 11 and kids between 6 months and 5. And what they've seen in all the studies that have been conducted in the last year is they have seen that kids 5 to 11 should probably get a third of the adult dose, where the adults get 30 micrograms. Kids between 5 and 11 will probably get 10 microgram. And those below the age of 5 will probably need a dose that is a tenth of a dose that adults get, which is 3 microgram. And that's been trialed and tested, not just to be efficacious, but to be safe as well. So if and when it comes to South Africa, we as parents of those small little kids and toddlers, and I mean, we can rest assured that our kids will actually not have a horrible experience when it comes to the vaccine.
Oh, you certainly put us all at ease. We know now the kids are going back to school. Dr. Emile, as always, it's so good to have you. And of course, for you at home, while we are all still constantly adapting to this brand new world that we are living in, it is great to have the guidance of knowledgeable medical professionals such as Dr. Emile Reid to really break down the massive amounts of information readily available online. But you heard the doctor, the kids are going back to school, everybody.